In the past, it was a staple of kidnappings for the hostage to hold up a newspaper to prove that they're still alive. The problem with me is that I started reading the newspapers I was holding up. Although I'm still, as you can judge by our social media overlords, in captivity. Nevertheless, I'll try my best to get what news I can out to you given the constraints. First up, stories on the domestic news front that I'm tracking. Your briefing begins with the headline, Ronna McDaniel announces resignation as RNC chair ahead of Super Tuesday. Republican National Committee chairwoman Ronna McDaniel announced Monday she will leave her post on March 8th, thus drawing to a close 7 years at the helm of the GOP. McDaniel, in the midst of her fourth two-year term, said that she would vacate the role at the party's spring training meeting in Houston, Texas, so as to allow her nominee to select a chair of their choosing. It has been the honor and privilege of my life to serve the Republican National Committee for 7 years as chairwoman to elect Republicans and grow our party, the 50-year-old said in a statement seen by ABC News, thus confirming previous speculation on the matter. Ronna McDaniel may not be the only female GOP member on the outs, judging by the next headline, namely, Koch Network pulls the plug on bankrolling Nikki Haley's campaign. Americans for Prosperity, which is bankrolled by the multi-billion-dollar Koch Network, announced that it was pulling the plug on financial support for Haley on the grounds that it is no longer money being well spent. In a memo sent to AFP senior advisor Emily Seidel, the organization said it intended to take stock of where the presidential race was going. AFP Action stands firm behind our endorsement for Nikki Haley. It takes a special leader with conviction, resolve, and steel in her spine to jump into a tough race with a narrow path. Nikki Haley has been willing to take on that challenge and offer America a forward-looking vision and solutions to the toughest issues our country faces. She is by far the best candidate to turn the page on our dysfunctional politics and take our country in a new positive direction. As we've discussed since the endorsement in November, we knew the presidential primary faced the longest odds, but we also knew, given what's at stake, we couldn't sit on the sidelines. This organization exists to do hard things, to challenge the status quo, to stick our necks out and lead. Americans deserve a choice for president who brings out the best in our country and who can deliver bold solutions to big challenges. Nevertheless, after Nikki Haley lost in her own state's primary, they're pulling the financial plug, despite all the nice things that they're kind of saying outwardly. So as the outlines of the 2024 race come into focus, a predictable narrative is shaping up, with only one possible spoiler, the third-party candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A word of caution, though. Zoologists have noted in the wild that animals, to avoid being overwhelmed, will usually whittle down their choices to two options. Most mammalian behavior regulates itself in this way. The oligarchs, of course, know this, which is why they always give us two political choices. It's why it's so difficult being a third-party candidate. At any rate, on to international news. "60 Minutes went to Sweden to portray their no-go zones as wonderful utopias standing in as proof of the success of mass migration. Problems arose, however, after the police escort to the journalist went away.
And they don't assimilate well into the Swedish culture and society, and they're unemployed, and they're poor. So you add all these factors together, and their youth are feeling marginalized and don't speak Swedish very well, so they don't get jobs or get into the Swedish youth culture either."
But not everyone is hostile.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my cousin lives in Melbourne.
Many locals are polite and friendly and happy to talk.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm very happy.
But what happened next changed everything. The police leave, and as we prepare to go, young men masking their faces arrive.
Good, you're doing good.
You're doing good?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Take it easy.
Okay, you too.
And attack.
Go. Mate, go! Don't you touch me. Okay, we're gonna drink.
Excuse me. Please, please. No, we are leaving, but you don't need to hurt us. There's no need to be unkind.
You can't film. Don't do it.
The gang's attention turns when a local intervenes and drives his mobility scooter into the most violent attacker.
Move.
That clip kind of makes me think of the book Tendencies and Tensions of the Information Age by Shemin and Curtis. In the book, they talk about post-industrial populations, which would be like Western Europe and the United States. And they say in the book that post-industrial people usually are universalistic in mindset, right? They think everybody tends to think like them or have their values. And it never occurs to them that people might have vastly different kind of belief systems. For instance, that professor back in Georgetown a few years ago who shocked everybody because he was a Muslim, and he said that it was quite, okay to rape and kidnap and enslave infidels. And I think this was in 2019. So, like a post-industrial person is just shocked by that. It's like, no, you're supposed to think just like I do. You have our values. My values are the universal ones. And it's like the world doesn't work like that. And they say in the book that agrarian populations tend to be very tribal, right? They're not universalistic. They basically, concentrate on their house of belief, whether that's a madrasa or a church or whatever. They have primary social relationships, with their family, their relatives and stuff like that. Whereas universalistic people usually have all their connections with strangers. A universalistic person might talk to the waitress at the restaurant where he works much more than he talks to his own mother, or he might have online friendships with people that he's never met. That's an artifact of a post-industrial mindset versus a tribal mindset, which agrarian populations like Muslims or people from Mesoamerica, all the people that they're essentially flooding into the West right now, they are, agrarian populations. So they have this tribal mindset. And so Shemet and Curtis talk about how most of the racism is not going to be coming from the post-industrial population. It will be coming from these agrarian populations, which is what we see in the clip. But speaking of accusations of racism, that takes us into the next article. Mary Poppins' film age rating raised over discriminatory language. The 1964 film has been reclassified from a U, which stands for Universal, to a PG, for parental guidance. In it, a derogatory term originally used by white Europeans about nomadic peoples in southern Africa is used to refer to soot-faced chimney sweeps. That now exceeds our guidelines for U films, the BBFC said. The film is set in London in 1910 and follows a magical nanny played by Dame Julie, who looks after her family's children with the help of Bert, a busking chimney sweep played by Dick Van Dyke. It won 5 Oscars in 1965, including Best Actress and Best Song. If Mary Poppins is too hardcore for you, but talking to kids about esoteric sexual practices and deviant manners of living is more your speed, what a world we've entered. Something in our civilization has died. But that brings us to our obituary segment. Banker and inspiration for Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, Jacob Rothschild, dies at aged 87. British financier Jacob Rothschild, a senior member of one of Europe's best-known banking dynasties, has died at the age of 87, his family announced on Monday. The family, in a statement to the UK's press association news agency, called Rothschild a towering presence in many people's lives. He was a superbly accomplished financier, a champion of the arts and culture, a devoted public servant, a passionate supporter of charitable causes in Israel and Jewish culture, a keen environmentalist, and much-loved friend, father, and grandfather, the family said. Rothschild, born in England in 1936, started his career at the family bank, N.M. Rothschild & Sons, in 1963 before going on to co-found J. Rothschild Assurance Group, which became today's London-based wealth manager, St. James Place. He was involved in many business endeavors, including founding investment trust RIT Capital Partners, which has backed a variety of companies, from hedge funds to clean technology startups. After the passage of Henry Kissinger some months back, it marks a banner year for the fact that another supervillain has left us on his happy trails to someplace warm, I'm sure. Very, very warm. But speaking of warmth, I have only the warmest thanks for you. I'd like to thank you for watching the show, or as I like to call it, that suspicious gap in my resume. See you next time.
Consider subscribing to my new podcast, Classic Paranormal. It's a clearinghouse for lost real-life accounts of true ghost stories. It's found on Apple Podcasts. Go there now if you're interested in enigmatic tales, chilling true accounts, chronicles from cases of the past that time has forgotten, but that the modern person who likes relaxing by a campfire swapping ghost stories might appreciate. As I said, the new podcast I'm launching is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and there's a link in the description below on this video.